The girl disappeared on her way to prom night in 1999. 6 years later, a worker at a junkyard found this inside the foam of a car seat. The junkyard worker, Raul Mendoza, had been dismantling the old blue Chevrolet Cavalier for 3 hours when he came across something strange inside the driver's seat foam. His calloused hands stopped when he felt a hard object wrapped in plastic. He carefully pulled it out from between the rusty springs. It was a high school graduation ring from Benito Juarez High School, class of 1999. Engraved on the inside, E. Herrera. Raul knew that name. The entire city of Puebla remembered Esperanza Herrera, the 17-year-old girl who had disappeared on her way to prom night 6 years earlier. Diego Herrera received Raul's call that same afternoon. His younger sister had been officially declared dead 2 years earlier, but he had never stopped searching for answers. At 25, Diego worked as a mechanic in his father's shop and dedicated every free moment to investigating the case. "I found something that belonged to your sister," Raul told him over the phone, "in a car that arrived a week ago." Diego immediately closed the shop and drove the 20 kilometers to the junkyard. Raul was waiting next to the dismantled Chevrolet, holding a transparent plastic bag. "Are you sure this is hers?" Diego asked, examining the golden ring with the blue stone, so characteristic of her graduating class. "My daughter studied with Esperanza. I remember when everyone bought these rings in their 5th year." Diego felt his hands trembling. After 6 years, he finally had a real lead. Where did this car come from? Don Esteban Morales brought it last week, said he had kept it on his ranch for years and that it was time to get rid of it. He paid me to haul it away immediately. Diego inspected the inside of the vehicle. The seats had been removed, but he could see dark stains on the metal floor. The steering wheel showed signs of being cleaned with strong chemicals. "Did you find anything else?" Raul shook his head. "Only the ring. But look at this." He pointed to the trunk of the car. Someone had welded a metal plate over the original trunk. It looked like a recent job, maybe a few years old. Diego photographed every detail with his cell phone: the welded plate, the stains on the floor, the engine serial numbers. Something told him this car held more secrets than just his sister's ring. "Raul, I need you not to touch anything else. I'm calling the police." "You think here?" "I don't know, but this is the first real trace of Esperanza in 6 years. I can't ignore it." Diego dialed the number of Commander Jimenez, the police officer who had led the original investigation. Jimenez had been one of the few who truly made an effort to find Esperanza, although in the end, the case was archived for lack of evidence. "Commander, this is Diego Herrera. I think I found something related to my sister." "What kind of something, kid?" Diego explained about the ring in Esteban Morales' car. There was a long silence on the other end. "Are you sure the car belongs to Morales?" "That's what Raul says. He personally brought it last week." "All right, don't touch anything else. I'm coming with the forensic team." While waiting, Diego remembered the night Esperanza disappeared. It was May 15, 1999. His sister had spent weeks preparing for prom. She had bought an emerald green dress and made an appointment at the beauty salon. Her boyfriend, Roberto Vasquez, was supposed to pick her up at 7 p.m., but Roberto never arrived. At 8, Esperanza decided to go alone to the dance. She told her parents she would take a taxi and be back before midnight. That was the last time her family ever saw her. The initial investigation was exhaustive. Police questioned Roberto, who had a solid alibi. He had been at the hospital with his mother, who suffered a heart attack that afternoon. They also questioned classmates, teachers, acquaintances. No one had seen Esperanza arrive at the dance. Local taxi drivers were checked. None remembered picking up a girl in a green dress that night. The security cameras at the hotel where the dance was held showed no images of Esperanza entering or leaving the building. After 3 months, the case went cold. No body, no witnesses, no evidence of a crime. The Herrera family hired private investigators, published ads in newspapers, offered rewards. It was all useless. Commander Jimenez arrived with 2 forensic technicians 40 minutes later. Diego watched them as they meticulously examined the vehicle, took photographs, and collected samples. "The stains on the floor look like blood," one of the technicians told Jimenez. "We need to analyze the samples in the lab. And the welded plate on the trunk? That's definitely recent work. Whoever put it there wanted to hide something. Jimenez approached Diego. "We're going to need to cut that plate to see what's underneath, and we're going to have to interrogate Esteban Morales." "You think he—" "I don't want to speculate yet, but it's suspicious this car shows up now after so many years." I felt a mix of hope and terror. After 6 years of uncertainty, there was finally a real possibility of discovering what had happened to his sister. But the answers might be more terrible than anything he had imagined. The forensic technicians carefully cut through the welded plate with a power saw. When it finally came off, everyone fell silent. Inside the trunk were several objects: a green high-heeled shoe, a pearl necklace, and a student ID card. The ID belonged to Esperanza Herrera. Commander Jimenez established a perimeter around the junkyard while the forensic technicians continued processing the Chevrolet. Diego watched every movement from the owner's office where Raul was preparing coffee for everyone. "We have enough evidence to officially reopen the case," Jimenez told Diego, "but I need you to understand something. 6 years have passed. Many things may have changed." "You mean Esteban Morales?" "I mean Morales is a respected figure in this community. High school principal for 20 years, member of the municipal council, leader of several charities. We can't accuse him without solid evidence." Diego clenched his fists. "My sister is dead, Commander. Her ring and her belongings were in that man's car. What more evidence do you need?" "Evidence that proves how they got there. Morales can claim he bought the car used, that he knew nothing about the belongings. We need proof connecting him directly to the disappearance." The forensic technicians finished processing the vehicle 2 hours later. In addition to Esperanza's belongings, they found green fabric fibers matching the description of her dress and several partial fingerprints on different surfaces. "The fingerprints will take time to process," explained the lead technician, "but the fibers are a good lead. If we can find the dress, we'll have direct physical evidence."
Jimenez organized the operation to interrogate Esteban Morales. Diego insisted on being present, but the commander refused. "This is an official investigation. You've already done your part by finding the evidence. Let us do our job." Diego went home that night with more questions than answers. His mother, Elena, was waiting for him in the kitchen. At 52, she had aged considerably since Esperanza's disappearance. Her hair, once a shiny black, was now completely gray. "Is it true what they're saying on the news? Did they find something about Esperanza?" Diego showed her the photographs he had taken at the junkyard. Elena covered her mouth with her hands when she saw the graduation ring. "I always knew something bad had happened to her. A mother feels those things." "The police are going to interrogate Esteban Morales tomorrow, the school principal." "But he was always so kind to Esperanza. He always said she was one of his best students." "Mama, it was his car. Her things were inside." Elena sank heavily into a chair. All these years thinking maybe she had run away, that she was alive somewhere, that one day she would come back. Diego hugged his mother. He too had held on to that hope for a long time, but finding Esperanza's belongings in the trunk of the car had destroyed any illusion that she might still be alive. The next morning, Diego went straight to the police station. Jimenez had just returned from interrogating Morales. What did he say? That he bought the car used in the year 2000. He says he got it from a car lot in Mexico City, and that he never checked the trunk thoroughly. He claims he only used it occasionally for long trips. Do you believe him? His story has inconsistencies. He says he bought it at a lot, but he has no receipts or transaction documents. And the car was registered in his name in January 2000, only 8 months after your sister's disappearance. Diego felt his pulse quicken. Isn't that very suspicious? Definitely. But Morales has an explanation for everything. He says he paid cash because it was cheaper, that he lost the papers during a move, that he doesn't remember exactly when he bought it. And the fingerprints? We're still waiting for the results, but we found something interesting in his house. Jimenez showed Diego a photograph taken during the home search. It was a 1999 high school yearbook, open to the page where Esperanza's photo appeared. The page showed signs of having been consulted repeatedly. This was in his personal desk, not in the school office. And look at this. He pointed to several notes in the margins. He wrote comments about several students from that class, but the notes about Esperanza are particular. Diego read them. Intelligent, attractive, mature for her age, lives alone with working mother. His stomach churned. This sounds like he was evaluating her. That's what we thought. We've also started investigating whether there are other potential victims. Morales has been principal for 20 years. He's had access to thousands of students. You think Esperanza wasn't the only one? It's a possibility we have to consider. We're reviewing cases of missing students or those who reported inappropriate behavior during his tenure. Diego felt dizzy. The idea that his sister had been the victim of a systematic predator was even worse than imagining a crime of passion or a robbery gone wrong. What happens now? We keep investigating. The lab results will arrive in a few days. Meanwhile, we're going to question more people who knew Morales and Esperanza. We need to build a solid case. Diego left the station with his mind full of new worries. If Morales really was a serial predator, it meant that he had been operating freely for years. How many other families had suffered the same as his? He decided to conduct his own investigation. He began contacting former students of the high school, especially women who had studied during Morales' tenure. The first call was to Carmen Ruz, who had been Esperanza's best friend. "Diego, I'm so glad to hear from you. Is it true what they're saying about Esperanza?" "We found new evidence, Carmen. I need to ask you something about Principal Morales. Did you ever notice anything strange about his behavior?" There was a long pause before Carmen responded. "Now that you mention it, yes. I remember he always found excuses to call the prettiest girls into his office. He said it was to discuss their academic performance or college plans, but he never called the boys as often." Diego spoke to other former students, and each one described a similar experience with Morales. The theme was always the same. Morales asked the girls very personal questions about their family life, their love life, and many of them said they felt intimidated by his presence. Diego was horrified to realize that his sister had been the victim of a systematic predator. He decided to go through all of Esperanza's belongings the family had kept. In the room that had been his sister's, now a kind of sanctuary, he found her personal diary, letters, photographs, and school documents. He began reading the diary entries from the last months before her disappearance. The first entries were typical of a teenager: complaints about exams, comments about friends, plans for prom night. But by March 1999, the tone had changed. March 3, 1999. "Principal Morales asked me to stay after class today. He says he wants to talk about my college options. He asked if my parents give me enough freedom and if I have a serious boyfriend. I felt uncomfortable, but I guess he just wants to help." Diego kept reading, increasingly alarmed. March 15, 1999. Another meeting with Morales. This time he closed the door and put on classical music. He said it was to create a trusting atmosphere. He asked me about my love life and if I had had intimate experiences. I told him that was very personal, and he laughed, saying that when I'm his age, I'll understand that adults only want to protect young people. March 28, 1999. Morales gave me a book of poetry today. Inside, he wrote a dedication: "For a special young woman who deserves love and understanding." It gives me chills, but Carmen says he's probably just being nice.
The final entries were the most disturbing. May 10th, 1999. Morales asked me to go to his office tomorrow after classes. He says he has a special opportunity to discuss with me. I don't want to go, but he's the principal. Mom always says we must respect authority. May 14th, 1999. Tomorrow's graduation. I'm excited, but also nervous. Yesterday, Morales told me he wants to say goodbye to me in a special way because I'm one of his favorite students. I told him I would be busy with preparations for the dance, but he insisted I find time for him. He told me something very strange, that after I graduate, I'll understand many things about life that I don't understand now. The last entry was dated the day of her disappearance. May 15th, 1999. Today is the big day. Roberto can't come because his mom is in the hospital. Morales offered to drive me to the dance. He says he passes near the hotel on his way home. I suppose it's fine, though something tells me I shouldn't accept. But it's too late to find another ride. Diego felt the world collapse around him. His sister had gotten into Morales' car the night she disappeared. There was written evidence that he had been harassing her for months. He immediately called Commander Jimenez. "I found Esperanza's diary, Morales had been harassing her for months, and most importantly, she wrote that she accepted his offer to drive her to the dance the night she disappeared. Are you sure about this? It's written in her diary. Her last entry says Morales offered to take her because Roberto couldn't go. That changes everything. I'm coming for that diary immediately. And I need you not to tell anyone else about this until we have Morales in custody. Are you going to arrest him? With this evidence, we can obtain an arrest warrant, but first, I want the lab results. If the fingerprints confirm that Morales handled Esperanza's belongings, we'll have a solid case. An hour later, Jimenez arrived at the Herrera home with 2 detectives. Elena cried as she read her daughter's diary entries. I didn't know anything about this. Esperanza never told me the principal was bothering her. Predators are experts at making victims feel guilty or confused. They use their authority to manipulate the situation. But why did he kill her? Elena asked through tears. What could have happened that night? Probably she resisted his advances. Maybe she threatened to report him. Sexual offenders often resort to violence when they feel they're about to be exposed. Diego accompanied the police to the station to give his official statement. While waiting in the hallway, he overheard a conversation between 2 detectives. The lab results came in an hour ago, one said. The fingerprints on the ring and the ID match Esteban Morales, and the blood samples also match Esperanza Herrera's blood type. We'll need DNA for definitive confirmation, but it's practically certain. Diego felt a mix of relief and rage. Finally, they had solid evidence against Morales, but it also meant all his worst suspicions were true. Jimenez came out of his office with a signed arrest warrant. We're going for Morales now. Do you want to come with us to identify him formally? Diego nodded. He wanted to see the face of the man who had murdered his sister when he realized he had been discovered. They arrived at Morales' house in Lomas de Angelopolis, an upscale residential neighborhood. It was a large 2-story house with a well-kept garden and 2 cars in the driveway. Morales' wife, an elegant middle-aged woman, opened the door. Good afternoon, Mrs. Morales. We're here for your husband. May I ask why? Jimenez showed her the warrant. We have a warrant to arrest Esteban Morales for the murder of Esperanza Herrera. The woman turned pale. She must be a mistake. My husband, he's never... Yes, he's in his study. But this is ridiculous. Esteban is a respectable man. He would never hurt anyone. The detectives entered the house. Morales was sitting behind a large desk reading documents. When he saw the police, his expression changed immediately. Esteban Morales, you were under arrest for the murder of Esperanza Herrera. Morales stood up slowly. He was a tall man of about 60, with neatly combed gray hair and glasses. He wore a navy blue sweater and dress pants. He looked every bit the respectable educator. This is a misunderstanding, he said calmly. I didn't kill anyone. We have evidence that says otherwise. Your fingerprints are on the victim's belongings. For the first time, Morales looked nervous. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you remember driving Esperanza Herrera to the prom on May 15, 1999? I never drove that girl anywhere. Her diary says otherwise. She wrote that you offered to take her because her boyfriend couldn't go. Morales remained silent for a moment. Diego could see his mind working quickly, trying to find an explanation. Even if I had offered to take her, that doesn't mean I killed her. So you admit you drove her? I admit nothing. I want a lawyer. The detectives handcuffed him and read him his rights. As they let him out of the house, Morales looked directly at Diego. You don't know what you're doing. There are things about your sister you don't understand. Diego felt his blood run cold. Even under arrest, Morales was trying to manipulate the situation to make him doubt his sister. What do you mean by that? Your sister wasn't the innocent girl you think she was. Jimenez cut him off. That's enough. Let's go. But Morales' words had achieved their purpose. Diego was left with the gnawing doubt of what he had meant, what secrets the full story of that night still held. The arrest of Esteban Morales shocked the entire city. Local newspapers published the news on their front pages, and social media was flooded with comments of disbelief and support for the Herrera family. The next morning, Diego returned to the police station to hear the results of the initial interrogation. Jimenez received him in his office with a grim expression. Morales continues to deny everything. His lawyer, Ricardo Valenzuela, is one of the best criminal attorneys in the state. It's going to be hard to get a confession, but we have enough evidence to prosecute him. For now? For now, yes. The fingerprints, the diary, the belongings in his car, but Valenzuela is already arguing that all the evidence is circumstantial. Circumstantial? His fingerprints are on my sister's things. His defense will be that he found the belongings in the car when he bought it and that he never reported them because he didn't know whose they were. They'll say he touched them out of curiosity, nothing more.
Diego felt frustration growing in his chest. And the diary, how do they explain that she wrote he was going to take her to the dance? They're going to argue that the diary doesn't prove he actually took her. They can say she changed her mind, that she got another ride, that the diary only reflects her plans, not what actually happened. That's ridiculous, but it's enough to create reasonable doubt. We need more evidence, something that ties him directly to the moment of the crime. Jimenez handed Diego a list of names. These are former students and teachers who worked with Morales over the last 20 years. We need to talk to all of them to establish a pattern of behavior. Diego looked over the list. He recognized several names, including some of his own high school teachers. I already spoke with Carmen Ruiz and Patricia Montes. Both confirmed inappropriate behavior. That's a good start. Can you contact the others? Diego spent the rest of the day making phone calls. Most of the former female students were willing to talk, and their testimonies revealed a disturbing pattern. Ana Sanchez, class of 1995, Morales always found excuses to touch students. A paternal hug that lasted too long, putting his hand on our shoulders when he reviewed our work. Several of us talked about it, but we never officially reported anything. Lucia Torres, class of 2001. He asked me to stay after school for extra tutoring. When I arrived, he had put on romantic music and closed the curtains. He asked me if I had experience with older men and if my family gave me enough affection. I left immediately. Maria Gonzalez, class of 1997. My last week of school, Morales asked me to come to his office to say goodbye. He gave me a necklace and told me it was special to him. Then he tried to kiss me. I told him I was going to tell my parents, and he got furious. He threatened to ruin my grades if I spoke. Each testimony confirmed the same thing. Morales had used his position to harass students for decades, but Diego realized Esperanza had been different. According to her diary, the harassment had been longer and more intense. That afternoon, he received an unexpected call. It was Valeria Medina, a woman who had been secretary at the high school for 15 years. Diego, I saw the news about Principal Morales. I need to talk to you. About what? About what really happened the night your sister disappeared. I think I can help. They met in a discreet cafe downtown. Valeria was a 45-year-old woman, nervous and cautious. I'm afraid to talk, she admitted. Morales has many powerful friends in this city, but I can't stay silent after what I saw. What did you see? The night of May 15, 1999. I stayed late at school finishing the graduation reports. I saw Morales leave his office with Esperanza. She looked uncomfortable, like she didn't want to go with him. Diego felt his heart race. Did you see them get into the car? Yes. Esperanza was wearing her green prom dress. Morales took her by the arm possessively, as if she were his property. Why didn't you say anything during the original investigation? Valeria lowered her gaze. Because Morales threatened me. The next day, he called me to his office and told me that if I mentioned anything about that night, I would lose my job. I had 2 children to support, Diego. I needed that job. There were others who knew too. The janitor, Don Felipe, also saw them, but the same thing happened to him. Morales threatened him with being fired if he talked. Don Felipe still works there. He retired 3 years ago, but I think he would be willing to talk now. Diego immediately contacted Jimenez to inform him about the new witnesses. The commander arranged formal interviews with Valeria and Felipe. Felipe Ramirez was 70 years old and had worked at the high school for 30 years before retiring. His testimony was even more specific. I saw the principal leave with the girl that night. She looked scared. When they got to the car, she tried to open the passenger door, but the principal grabbed her arm and said something. She shook her head no, but he insisted. Finally, she got in, but she looked very nervous. Did you hear what he said? Not exactly, but it seemed like he was giving her instructions, telling her not to worry, that everything would be fine. What time was this? Around 7:30. I remember because my shift ended at 8 and I was gathering my things. Did you see them return? No, I left at 8 sharp. But the next day, when I heard the girl had disappeared, I immediately thought about what I had seen. Why didn't you report it?
Felipe fell silent for a moment. Morales summoned me to his office 2 days later. He said there were rumors that I was making up stories about him. He warned me that slander was a serious crime and that I could get into legal trouble. He also reminded me that I depended on him for my full pension. With the testimonies of Valeria and Felipe, the prosecution had solid evidence that Morales was the last person to see Esperanza alive, but the defense attorney kept arguing that there was no direct evidence of the crime. Can you prove they were together that night? Jimenez explained. Yes, but can you prove what happened after? Valenzuela is going to argue that Morales took her to the dance and that they separated there, but the hotel has no record of her arrival. No, but the defense can argue she arrived and left immediately, that she changed her mind about attending the dance. That's ridiculous, but it's enough to create reasonable doubt. We need more evidence, something that ties him directly to the moment of the crime. Diego felt frustrated by the complexities of the legal system. They had clear evidence Morales was the last to see Esperanza alive, but apparently it wasn't enough to guarantee a conviction. What do we need to close the case? Ideally, we need to find the body, or a confession, or a witness who actually saw the crime. Do you think the body is in a specific place? We're investigating properties Morales owns or had access to during the last 6 years. He has a small ranch on the outskirts of the city and a summer house in Cuernavaca. Are you going to search them? We already have the warrants. Searches start tomorrow. Diego felt a mix of hope and fear. After 6 years, they might be close to finding his sister's body. But he also knew that every answer brought new painful questions about Esperanza's last moments. That night, while reviewing the notes from all the interviews, Diego realized something important. Several witnesses had mentioned Morales had powerful friends in the city. If he had managed to silence school employees for 6 years, it was possible that he had accomplices or protectors in positions of authority. The question was, how deep did the cover-up go, and who else had been protecting Morales all these years? Diego arrived early at the police station to accompany the search teams combing Morales' properties. Jimenez greeted him with troubling news. We have a problem. Someone leaked information about the searches. When we arrived at the ranch this morning, we found evidence they had been burning documents recently. Who could have leaked the information? We're investigating, but it means Morales has allies inside the system. Someone is helping him from within. Diego felt a chill. If there was corruption inside the police or the judicial system, the case could become enormously complicated. Did you find anything at the ranch? Ashes from burned documents, but also something more interesting. In the barn, we found a hidden room behind a false wall. Inside were photographs of several students, including some of your sister. Jimenez showed him the confiscated photographs. They were pictures taken without the girls' knowledge, on the school grounds, leaving their homes, walking down the street. Esperanza appeared in more than 20 different photos. This proves he had been stalking her for months, Diego said with a trembling voice. Exactly, but there's more. We also found a diary Morales kept. His entries are disturbing. The entries in Morales' diary revealed the mind of an obsessed predator. He described his special students in explicitly sexual terms and detailed his plans to educate them about adult life. One entry dated May 10, 1999 was particularly incriminating. She is ready for the final lesson. She has responded well to my guidance during these months. Graduation will be the perfect moment. Once she is under my complete control, she will understand her true purpose. This is clear evidence of premeditation, Jimenez explained. He had been planning to assault your sister for weeks.
Diego could no longer contain his anger. I want to confront that man. I want to hear from his own mouth what he did to Esperanza. Diego, that's not a good idea. Anything he says outside of an official interrogation cannot be used in court. I don't care about the court. I want to hear the truth. Despite Jimenez's objections, Diego insisted on being present during the next interrogation of Morales. Defense attorney Valenzuela would also be present, which would limit what Morales could say. The interrogation room was small and claustrophobic. Morales sat in a metal chair, no longer in his elegant clothes, but in the orange prison uniform. Yet he maintained an arrogant demeanor. "Mr. Morales," Jimenez began, "we found your personal diary at the ranch. Can you explain these entries about Esperanza Herrera?" Valenzuela leaned toward his client. "You don't have to answer that." But Morales seemed eager to speak.
That diary reflects private thoughts, daydreams, not real actions. Daydreams about improper behavior with students? I never harmed anyone. Then what did you do to my sister? Morales looked at him directly for the first time. His eyes were cold, calculating. Your sister was not the innocent little girl you think she was. What do you mean by that? Esperanza knew exactly what she was doing. She attracted me with her behavior, the way she dressed, how she looked at me during class. Diego stood up violently, but Jimenez restrained him. It's a classic defense mechanism of aggressors, blaming the victim. Morales continued. That night she agreed to come with me willingly. She knew what I expected from her. And what did you expect? Gratitude, recognition. I was her mentor, the person who had guided her academic and personal development for years. You expected a special closeness from a young student. Valenzuela intervened. My client will not answer questions that could incriminate him. But Morales ignored his lawyer. Esperanza was mature for her age. She understood the complexities of relationships that were not appropriate. Do such relationships include killing when the other person refuses? I didn't kill anyone. Then where is my sister? Morales stayed silent for a moment, but Diego could see something in his eyes. Knowledge. Guilt. I don't know where Esperanza is. I left her at the hotel that night and never saw her again. Liar. The hotel has no record of her ever arriving. Hotels don't record everyone who comes and goes. Jimenez cut in. We have photographs you took of Esperanza without her knowledge. We have your diary describing attempts to manipulate her. We have witnesses who saw you take her that night. Your fingerprints are on her belongings. All of that is circumstantial. And the fact that her things were found in the trunk of your car. For the first time, Morales seemed nervous. I already told you, I bought that car used. I didn't know those things were there. You bought the car 8 months after Esperanza disappeared. You expect us to believe that's a coincidence? The documents were lost. I don't remember exactly when I bought it. Diego leaned forward. You know what I think? I think you silenced her that night when she resisted your unwanted attention. I think you put her body in the trunk of that car and took it somewhere to bury it. Then you kept the car at your ranch for years. Morales looked at him with a disturbing smile. You can believe whatever you want, but you can't prove any of that. Why did you keep her belongings? Why didn't you get rid of them? I don't know what you're talking about. Your fingerprints are on my sister's ring and ID. As I already explained, I touched them when I found them in the car. Jimenez ended the interrogation after 2 hours without obtaining a confession. Morales stuck to his story that he had bought the car used and had accidentally found the belongings. It's frustrating, Jimenez told Diego as they left the room. We know he's guilty, but he's too smart to confess. What if we don't find Esperanza's body? We can prosecute him with the evidence we have, but it would be much easier with direct physical evidence. Diego felt despair growing in his chest. After 6 years, they had finally found his sister's killer, but the legal system might allow him to escape justice. There has to be something else, some evidence we've overlooked. We're reviewing everything again. Bank records, his properties, people he knew. Something has to come up. That afternoon, Diego received an unexpected call from Carmen Rus, Esperanza's best friend. Diego, I saw the news about Morales. I remembered something that might be important. What is it? A week before graduation, Esperanza told me that Morales had given her a key. She said it was to a special room where they could talk privately without interruptions. A special room. Where? I'm not sure, but Esperanza seemed scared when she told me. She said she didn't understand why they needed a secret room to talk about universities. Did she mention if she had been to that room? I think so. She said Morales had taken her there once and that there were strange things. Photographs of former students, a bed, music playing. Diego immediately called Jimenez with this new information. If they could find that secret room, they might have the physical evidence they needed to close the case. The search for the secret room would begin the next day, but Diego had the feeling that Morales still had more secrets and that the case was more complicated than they had imagined. The search for the secret room began at dawn. Diego accompanied the investigators as they systematically inspected all of Morales' known properties: the high school,
his main house, the ranch, and the summer house in Cuernavaca. At the high school, they found a room in the basement that had been converted into a private office. It was equipped with a sofa bed, a sound system, and the walls were covered with photographs of students from different years. "This must be the room Carmen mentioned," Diego said as he examined the photographs. Esperanza appeared in several of them, always in innocent poses, but taken without her knowledge. The forensic technicians found disturbing evidence in the room. Hidden cameras had been installed at several angles, and there was a file with videos of counseling sessions with different students over the years. "This is evidence of systematic misuse of trust," the lead technician explained. Morales had been recording young students for years. In one of the videos, dated 3 days before graduation, Esperanza appeared nervously sitting on the couch while Morales spoke to her from off-camera. "You don't have to worry about anything, Esperanza. Trust me, I know what's best for your future." "But Principal, my parents expect me to come home after the dance." "Your parents don't understand the opportunities you have. I do. I've been preparing you for this for months." "Preparing me for what?" "To step into a new stage of life, to experience what it means to be valued by someone who truly appreciates you."
In the video, Esperanza looked clearly uncomfortable. "I think I should go." "Esperanza, sit down. We're not finished talking." The video ended abruptly when Esperanza stood up to leave. Diego had to step out of the room. Watching his sister in the final days of her life being manipulated by that predator was too painful. Jimenez found him in the hallway. "I know it's hard, but this video is crucial evidence. It clearly shows that Morales was grooming your sister. There are more videos, several. He documented his sessions with multiple students for years. This will be key to the trial." Investigators had also found a detailed file Morales had kept on each of his victims. Esperanza's file contained personal information, photographs, copies of her school essays, and detailed notes on her progress. A note dated May 14, 1999 read, "E is ready for the final experience. She has shown enough maturity and trust. Tomorrow will be perfect. Graduation, emotions high, her parents distracted. I'll take her to the cabin after the dance." "The cabin?" Diego asked. "What cabin?" Jimenez checked the property records. "We have no record of Morales owning any cabin. Maybe he rented it, or it belongs to a friend." Investigators expanded the search to include properties associated with Morales' relatives and acquaintances. After several hours, they found a record of a cabin in the Malinche Forest, about an hour from the city, registered under Morales' brother's name. "We're going there immediately," Jimenez decided. The cabin was located at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by tall pines and completely isolated. It was a rustic, single-story structure with small windows and a stone fireplace. Diego felt chills seeing the place. It was the perfect setting for a secluded crime. No neighbors, no potential witnesses. Forensic technicians began processing the cabin immediately. In the master bedroom, they found more hidden cameras and evidence that it had recently been used for sessions with victims. But the most important discovery came when the cadaver dogs reacted to a specific area behind the cabin. "There's something buried here," the dog handler reported. Technicians began carefully digging. At a depth of 3 feet, they found fragments of green fabric. "It appears to be green silk, consistent with a party dress," reported the forensic technician. Diego felt his legs weaken. After 6 years, they had finally found physical evidence of his sister's fate. The excavation continued for several hours. In addition to the dress fragments, they found human bones, high-heeled shoes, and jewelry matching descriptions of what Esperanza had been wearing the night she disappeared. "We'll need DNA analysis for official confirmation," Jimenez explained. "But based on the circumstantial evidence, we're confident we found your sister." Diego collapsed against a nearby tree. The search was over, but the relief was mixed with deep pain. There was no longer any hope that Esperanza was alive somewhere. Investigators continued processing the crime scene. They found further evidence that painted a clear picture of what had happened that night. Based on the physical evidence, it looks like he brought her here after picking her up from school. The cameras in the cabin suggest he planned to record the sexual assault. When she resisted, he killed her. How did she die? The bones show trauma to the skull, consistent with blows from a blunt object. She likely died from head injuries. Diego closed his eyes, trying not to imagine his sister's last moments of terror. How long was she here after he killed her? Based on the evidence, it seems he buried the body immediately, then thoroughly cleaned the cabin,
But he left enough traces for us to reconstruct what happened. With the discovery of the body and the additional evidence from the cabin, the prosecution now had a solid case against Morales. But Diego knew the legal process would be long and painful. What happens now? We confront Morales with all this new evidence. Hopefully, he'll finally confess and spare us a lengthy trial. But as they returned to the city, Diego realized something that had been bothering him for days. Morales had operated for decades without being detected. He had silenced witnesses, he had access to secret properties, he had inside information about the investigation. Commander, I don't think Morales acted alone. Someone else knew what he was doing. Someone was protecting him. Jimenez nodded thoughtfully. We've been thinking the same thing. The question is, who and how far does the conspiracy go? The answer to that question would come sooner than expected, revealing a network of corruption far deeper than Diego had imagined. News of the discovery of Esperanza's body spread quickly throughout the city. The media surrounded the police station, and reporters tried to get statements from Diego and his family. Diego decided to give a brief press conference to thank the investigators and ask for privacy for his family during the grieving process. But as he spoke to reporters, he noticed something strange. Several police officers he didn't recognize were taking photos and videos of him. After the conference, Jimenez pulled him aside. We have a problem. Someone leaked information about the discovery before we could interrogate Morales again. When we went to his cell this morning, he was gone. What? How is that possible? Wasn't he in custody? 24 hours ago, someone forged a transfer order. The guards thought they were moving him to another facility for his safety. By the time we realized the mistake, he had been free for 3 hours. Diego felt his blood run cold. After 6 years of searching, his sister's killer had escaped. How did they know exactly when to make the fake transfer? That's the important question. Someone with insider access coordinated this. We're investigating everyone who knew about the cabin operation. Do you have any idea where he might be? We've issued alerts on all airports, bus stations, and border crossings, but Morales knows this region well. He could be hiding anywhere. Diego felt a mix of rage and helplessness. I need to help with the search. Absolutely not. If Morales feels cornered, he could become dangerous. We don't want you becoming a target. But Diego had already made up his mind. He knew the region as well as any cop, and he had contacts who could help. He wasn't going to sit back while his sister's killer escaped. That afternoon, without informing the authorities, Diego began his own search. He started by contacting mechanics and gas station workers along the main highways. If Morales was fleeing by vehicle, he'd need fuel and possibly repairs. At the third gas station he visited, on the road toward Veracruz, the attendant remembered seeing a man matching Morales' description. He came around 2 a.m. He was driving an old pickup and only paid for the minimum amount of fuel, like he didn't have much money. Which way did he go? He kept going on the highway toward the port, but he looked nervous, like he was running from something. Diego continued along the route toward Veracruz, stopping in each small town to ask about Morales. In a truck stop restaurant, the waitress remembered serving breakfast to a man matching the description. He was very agitated, she recalled. He kept looking at the road, like he expected someone to be following him. He also asked about ships leaving the port. Diego realized Morales was trying to leave the country by sea. He immediately called Jimenez. I think he's trying to escape through the port of Veracruz. A waitress says he asked about ships. What are you doing in Veracruz? I told you to stay home. I couldn't sit around doing nothing while he escaped. Diego, come back immediately. We're sending teams to the port now. But Diego was too close to give up. He continued toward the port, calling contacts who worked at the docks. At the port, a dock worker told him a man had been asking about work on cargo ships that morning. He said he had administrative experience and that he urgently needed to leave the country for family matters. He directed him to Captain Herrera of the freighter San Miguel, which departs tonight for Guatemala.
Diego felt a surge of adrenaline. Morales was at the port, possibly already on board a ship that would be leaving that night. He found the freighter San Miguel docked at Pier 7. It was an old cargo ship with a small crew. Diego boarded without authorization, searching for Morales among the containers and cabins. He found him in the engine room, trying to convince the engineer to let him stay as a temporary worker. "Esteban Morales!" Diego shouted from the entrance to the room. Morales spun around sharply. Seeing Diego, his expression shifted from surprise to desperation.
"You don't understand," Morales shouted. "I didn't want things to happen like this. I didn't want Esperanza to die. She resisted more than I expected. It was supposed to be different." Diego felt pure rage running through his veins. She was supposed to accept your plans? Morales began backing toward the rear of the engine room. "She was a special girl. I just wanted to teach her things about life." "You ended her life when she refused your unwanted attention." "It was an accident. When she started screaming, I tried to calm her. I just wanted her to stay quiet." The ship's engineer had run off to get help. Diego and Morales were alone in the engine room. "I didn't plan to kill her, but when she threatened to tell everyone what happened, I knew my life would be over. My family, my career, everything." So he chose to save his reputation by silencing an innocent girl. Morales had reached the end of the room. There was nowhere left to retreat. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The community, my family, my responsibilities. I couldn't let a girl ruin all of that." Diego approached slowly. "Who else knew? Who helped you cover up the crime for 6 years? No one helped me. I did it all alone. Lies. Someone helped you escape from prison. Someone's been protecting your secret." Morales looked toward the stairs leading to the upper deck. Diego realized he was going to try to escape. "Don't move!" Diego shouted. But Morales ran for the stairs. Diego chased him onto the deck of the ship, where the wind from the port blew fiercely. "You can't escape anymore! The police are on their way!" Morales reached the ship's railing and looked toward the dark water of the port. "If I get arrested, I'll tell everything," he shouted to Diego. "I'll tell who else was involved. Important people will fall with me." Who else knew what you were doing?" "The mayor, Ruben Castellanos, participated in several special gatherings with students. The construction entrepreneur Miguel Santamaria financed school teams and trips in exchange for access to the girls he selected. The former police chief, Fernando Vega, warned me when investigations got too close." Diego froze. The network of corruption was far wider than he had imagined. At that moment, they heard the approaching police sirens. Morales looked toward the water again. "If I get arrested, I'll spend the rest of my life in prison." "Don't be a coward. Face the consequences of what you did. How did Esperanza face the consequences when she resisted you?" Diego couldn't control his rage any longer. He lunged at Morales, but the older man sidestepped and tried to push Diego over the railing. The two men struggled on the ship's deck as the wind from the port blew fiercely. Finally, Diego managed to knock Morales down and held him until the police arrived. When Jimenez boarded the ship with his team, he found Diego sitting on top of Morales, who had finally been captured. "He's under arrest again," Jimenez told Morales, "and this time there won't be any more escapes." But Morales' revelations about other accomplices had opened a new dimension in the case. The investigation was far from over. Back at the police station, Morales was placed under maximum custody, with guards 24 hours a day. His escape attempt had eliminated any possibility of bail. Jimenez organized a formal interrogation with a state prosecutor and an official court stenographer present. Diego was authorized to observe from an adjacent room through a one-way mirror. The defense attorney Valenzuela had withdrawn from the case after the escape, claiming his client had violated the terms of his representation. Morales now had a public defender who was clearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the case. "Mr. Morales," the prosecutor began, "you were caught in a flagrant attempt to flee the country. That constitutes a serious violation of the terms of your detention." "I was afraid," Morales replied. "I know there are powerful people who don't want me to speak about what I know." "What people?" Morales looked toward the one-way mirror as if he knew Diego was watching. "For 20 years, as principal of the high school, I've seen many things. I've participated in activities involving important figures in this city." The prosecutor leaned forward. "Specifically, what activities are you talking about?" "There was a group of influential men who had inappropriate interests in students. I provided access in exchange for protection and economic benefits." Diego felt his stomach churn. His sister's case was part of something much larger and darker. "Can you name these people?" "The mayor, Ruben Castellanos, participated in several special gatherings with students. The construction entrepreneur Miguel Santamaria financed school teams and trips in exchange for access to the girls he selected. The
The former police chief, Fernando Vega, warned me when investigations got too close. The prosecutor took detailed notes. These people knew about your misconduct. They didn't know specifically about Esperanza Herrera until later. What happened to Esperanza Herrera on the night of May 15th, 1999? I picked her up from school, as we had agreed. I told her we would first go get something from my office before the dance, but we didn't go to the dance. No, I took her directly to the cabin. I told her it was a special surprise to celebrate her graduation. Diego closed his eyes, but forced himself to keep listening when he realized her awareness of Morales' true intentions. When I started approaching her, I explained it was part of her education for adult life, that I was the right person to guide her through it.
How did she react? She got scared. She tried to leave the cabin, but the door was locked. I told her to calm down, that I wouldn't hurt her if she cooperated, but she resisted. She started screaming and struggling, scratched my face, and tried to break the windows. I told her to stop making noise or there would be consequences. The prosecutor continued with the questions, and each answer was more horrifying than the last. At what point did you decide to kill her? It wasn't a decision. During the struggle, she fell and hit her head against the stone fireplace. There was a lot of blood. She was dead immediately. No, she was unconscious but breathing. I could have taken her to the hospital, but I knew that if she survived, she would tell everything. My career, my family, my reputation, everything would have been over. So what did you do? Morales lowered his head. I took a fireplace poker and hit her several times in the head until she stopped breathing. Diego had to leave the observation room. Hearing the specific details of his sister's murder was too painful. When he returned, the prosecutor was asking about the cover-up. What did you do with the body? I waited until very late at night and buried her behind the cabin. I cleaned all the blood and burned her dress and underwear. Why did you keep some of her belongings? As keepsakes. I knew it was dangerous, but I couldn't get rid of everything. Where did you keep the car during these 6 years? In a barn at my ranch. I covered it with tarps and only moved it when absolutely necessary. Why did you decide to get rid of the car now? Because I knew Diego Herrera would never stop searching. Every year that passed, it became more dangerous to keep it. The interrogation continued for 6 hours. Morales confessed to specific details about the murder, the cover-up, and the network of corruption that had allowed him to operate for decades. How many other students were victims of your network over the 20 years? Maybe 50 or 60 different girls? Most were just educational sessions. Esperanza was the only one who died. Educational sessions? Sexual abuse, intimate photography, emotional blackmail. But we always told them it was part of their education, that it was normal. Diego felt nauseated. His sister had been a victim of a systematic network of abuse that had operated for decades. By the end of the interrogation, Morales had fully confessed to Esperanza's murder, and it implicated several prominent figures in the city in the abuse network. Are you willing to testify against these other people in exchange for consideration in your sentence? Yes, I've already lost everything. At least I can make sure they also pay for what they did. When the interrogation ended, Jimenez met with Diego. We have a full confession for the murder, but now we have to investigate all the others involved. How long will it take? A month? Maybe years? This network involves very powerful people who will fight to protect themselves. Diego felt overwhelmed. After 6 years of seeking justice for his sister, he realized his case was just the tip of an iceberg of corruption and abuse. What happens to Morales now? He will be prosecuted for first-degree murder. With his confession and all the physical evidence, he will likely receive life imprisonment without parole. It was something, but Diego knew that no punishment could bring back his sister or compensate for the 6 years of pain his family had suffered.
Morales' confession had answered questions about what happened to Esperanza, but had opened new questions about how many other families had been victimized by this predator network. Morales' confession triggered a massive investigation involving federal agents, special prosecutors, and organized crime experts. Diego watched as his sister's case became part of a much larger investigation into systematic corruption and child abuse. The first major arrest occurred 3 days after Morales' confession. The former police chief, Fernando Vega, was detained at his retirement home in Cuernavaca, charged with obstruction of justice, cover-up, and complicity in sexual crimes. Diego attended Vega's hearing, where the former police chief denied all accusations. Esteban Morales is a desperate man who will invent any story to reduce his sentence, Vega declared through his lawyer. But investigators had found physical evidence corroborating Morales' claims. In Vega's personal files, they discovered documents showing regular payments from Morales over several years, classified as consulting services. They also found records showing Vega personally intervened to close or redirect multiple investigations that came too close to Morales' activities. In 1997, a student named Rosa Mendoza reported inappropriate behavior by Morales, the federal prosecutor explained during the hearing. The report was assigned to Detective Carlos Ruiz, but Vega transferred the case to a different detective who filed it without completing the investigation. In 1998, the parents of Patricia Morales filed a formal complaint against Morales. Again, Vega intervened to ensure the investigation was minimized. In the case of Esperanza Herrera in 1999, Vega assigned the case to junior investigators and limited the resources available for the search. Diego realized that his sister's disappearance could have been prevented if previous investigations had been properly conducted. The second arrest was of Mayor Ruben Castellanos, who was detained in his municipal office while conducting a city council meeting. Castellanos, a 55-year-old man who had served 2 terms as mayor, was charged with sexual abuse of minors, corruption, and organized crime. Evidence against Castellanos included photographs found in Morales' secret room showing him with multiple students in compromising situations, as well as bank records showing regular payments to Morales' personal account. Castellanos used his position as mayor to facilitate Morales' criminal activities. He provided political cover, interfered with investigations, and directly participated in the abuse of underage students. The third arrest was of businessman Miguel Santamaria, whose construction company had won several major municipal contracts during Castellanos' terms as mayor. During a search of Santamaria's offices, investigators found a private room equipped similarly to Morales' secret room, with hidden cameras, a bed, and files containing photographs of students. Investigators explained that Santamaria financed school trips, sports teams, and academic scholarships. In return, Morales provided him with private access to selected students. Records show that over the last 10 years, Santamaria had donated more than 2 million pesos to the high school, but the money had been funneled through personal accounts controlled by Morales.
As the investigation expanded, more victims emerged. A special phone line was established for former students to report abuse, and within the first week, more than 30 women had called with testimonies. Carmen Ruiz, Esperanza's best friend, became one of the spokespersons for the victims. "For years, we thought we were the only ones," she declared at a press conference. "Morales made us feel special, that what was happening was normal. He manipulated us to stay silent. Now we know there was a whole network of powerful men who abused us when we were minors. It's time for everyone to be held accountable." Diego helped organize a support group for the families of the victims. He realized that many families had suffered in silence for years, not knowing what had happened to their daughters. Ana Sanchez, whose daughter had been a victim of the network in 2003, told Diego about her experience. Maria completely changed after her final year of high school. She became withdrawn, depressed, stopped talking to us. We thought it was just stress from college exams. Now we understand she was traumatized by these men. She's been in therapy for years without really knowing what had happened to her. The testimonies revealed a systematic pattern of abuse that had affected generations of students.
Morales and his accomplices had selected victims from low-income families, students without strong parental figures, and girls who were academically successful but socially vulnerable. They looked for girls who were less likely to report abuse, explained the forensic psychologist who had interviewed the victims. Students who valued authority, who wanted to please their teachers, who were afraid of disappointing their families. The investigation also revealed that the network had connections with similar groups in other cities. Morales had been part of an informal organization of educators and public officials who shared resources and methods. It was a national network of predators operating under the guise of education, explained the federal agent in charge of the investigation. They used educational conferences, student exchange programs, and extracurricular activities to identify and transport victims. Diego felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the case. What had begun as a search for answers about his sister had become the exposure of decades of systematic abuse. How many girls were victims in total? Based on the testimonies we've received so far, we estimate over 200 direct victims over the last 20 years just in this city. Nationwide, it could be thousands. The investigation continued to expand, but Diego knew they could never fully recover all the victims or prosecute all the perpetrators. The harm was too extensive and had occurred over too long a time. However, exposing the network had given a voice to the victims and hope that other predators could be stopped before they could harm more girls. Esperanza's case had opened a door that could not be closed. The truth, though painful, was finally coming to light. 6 months after Morales' confession, the trials began. Diego attended every hearing accompanied by his mother Elena and dozens of families of other victims who had joined together to seek collective justice. Esteban Morales' trial was the first. With his full confession and overwhelming physical evidence, the process was relatively quick. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for Esperanza's murder, plus an additional 60 years for multiple sexual abuse charges. You abused your position of authority and trust to exploit vulnerable students for decades, the judge declared during sentencing. Your behavior not only destroyed individual lives, but corrupted an entire educational institution. Morales showed no remorse during sentencing. Even in his final remarks, he tried to justify his actions. I provided special education to girls who needed it, he stated. I prepared them for the real world in ways their families could not. Diego felt nauseated hearing these words, but also relieved that Morales would never leave prison. The trial of former police chief Fernando Vega was more complicated. His defense argued that he had been manipulated by Morales and did not have full knowledge of the criminal activities. However, the prosecution presented evidence that Vega had received over 500,000 pesos in payments from Morales over 10 years and had systematically interfered with related investigations. The defendant not only knew about the crimes, he actively facilitated them, argued the prosecutor. Without his protection, Morales could not have operated for so long. Vega was sentenced to 25 years in prison for corruption, obstruction of justice, and complicity in sexual crimes. The trial of Mayor Rubén Castellanos was the most followed by the media. As a prominent public figure, his fall was particularly dramatic. Evidence presented included videos of Castellanos participating in sessions with students, bank records showing irregular payments, and testimonies from multiple victims. One victim, now 25, testified about her experience with Castellanos when she was 17. He told me he had chosen me for a student leadership scholarship. He took me to a room in City Hall where he photographed me in compromising situations. Then he blackmailed me to stay silent, threatening to ruin my academic future. Castellanos was sentenced to 30 years in prison. His sentence included the loss of all retirement benefits and confiscation of properties acquired with money linked to criminal activities. The trial of Miguel Santamaria revealed the financial extent of the network. His company had used inflated municipal contracts to generate funds that were then funneled into criminal activities. The defendant turned his company into a money laundering operation to finance a sexual abuse network. Overcharges on public projects went directly toward funding crimes against minors. The prosecutor explained. Santa Maria was sentenced to 28 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution of over 5 million pesos to the victims. During the trials, Diego worked with other families to establish the Esperanza Herrera Foundation, an organization dedicated to preventing sexual abuse in educational institutions and supporting trauma victims. We want to ensure that Esperanza's death and the suffering of all these girls were not in vain, Diego explained during the foundation's launching ceremony. The foundation implemented several programs: education on consent and appropriate boundaries in schools, teacher training on how to identify and report abuse, and free counseling services for victims. They also worked with legislators to implement new laws requiring stricter background checks for educators and more effective reporting processes for abuse cases. A year after the trials, Benito Juarez High School was completely reorganized. The building where Morales had operated was demolished and replaced with a new student center that included glass-walled offices to ensure transparency in all interactions between adults and students. A memorial plaque was installed in the new building in memory of Esperanza Herrera and all abuse victims, honoring their courage and inspiring constant vigilance to protect the vulnerable. Diego visited Esperanza's grave every month. Her body had finally been buried in the municipal cemetery after all forensic analysis were completed. "Esperanza, we finally know the truth," he would say during these visits. "Your case helped save other girls. Your death was not in vain." Elena, his mother, had found peace in the foundation's work. "Helping other families gives meaning to what we lost," she explained. 5 years after the discovery of the ring in the scrapyard, Diego married Patricia Montes, one of the surviving victims who had found healing through the foundation's work. During their wedding, they reserved a moment to honor the memory of Esperanza and all the victims who had not survived. "Esperanza would have been my maid of honor," Diego said during his speech. "Although she cannot be here physically, her spirit lives in all the work we do to protect others." The federal investigation continued for years, identifying similar networks in other cities and prosecuting dozens of additional perpetrators. Esperanza Herrera's case became a national benchmark for investigating systematic abuse in institutions. Diego continued working as a mechanic, but dedicated half of his time to the foundation. He had found purpose in turning his pain into constructive action. "I will never get my sister back," he reflected, "but I can make sure her story helps prevent other families from going through the same thing."
On the 10th anniversary of Esperanza's disappearance, Diego organized a community ceremony where more than 500 people gathered to honor her memory and celebrate the progress made in protecting minors. "She was 17 years old when she died," Diego said during the ceremony. "She had dreams of studying medicine, helping sick people, having her own family. Those dreams were stolen by men who abused their power. But her memory lives on every time a girl feels safe enough to report inappropriate behavior. It lives on every time a teacher acknowledges proper boundaries. It lives on every time we as a community decide protecting the vulnerable is more important than protecting the powerful." Esperanza Herrera's story had become more than a criminal case. It was a symbol of the importance of never stopping the search for truth, the strength that can come from pain transformed into purpose, and the power of a united community to protect its most vulnerable members. Diego knew there would always be a void in his heart where his sister should be,
But he also knew that his tireless pursuit of justice had created a legacy that would continue protecting future generations of students. The truth about Esperanza had finally been revealed, and that truth continued saving lives years after her death.